Hello.
Hi, welcome to the INTJ equation. Today I am joined by Amanda. She is an INFJ. You can reach her at Ethereal Author on Instagram. She is also an author of several novels. Today we're going to talk about her experiences at INFJ, and we're going to discuss kind of compare and contrast growing up with borderline personality disorder parents from NI Dom's perspective. I'm, of course, an INTJ and she's an INFJ. So we're going ahead and take a look at that a little bit in depth. Amanda, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit further?
Yeah, there's not that much more to say, but yes, I am an INFJ. I have a borderline parent that I grew up with. That was very difficult. My books do touch on that a little bit. One's called Paper Flowers, the other is called Stars, and when they are available for publication, I will obviously let you know. But yeah, that's pretty much it about me. I'm just here to answer any questions you might have for me from an INFJ's perspective on borderline parents.
Okay, very cool. And stick around after we ask some questions, get warmed up. We'll definitely have a Q&A segment from the audience. So we'll go ahead and let you know when that is going to start. Just to kind of start things off, can you kind of give your experiences of being an INFJ altogether, kind of your whole life?
Yeah, being an INFJ is, aside from parenting, probably the most time consuming thing in the world. Um, I I know there are two types of INFJ. In my opinion, there are only two types, and that is healed and unhealed. I've been both types. Um, and as an unhealed INFJ, I was very miserable. It's like it's almost like I was being an extrovert even though I'm an introvert. And so I was always exhausted and I was always depressed feeling. And I sort of didn't feel like I was living my true self, I guess, and I wasn't. And I think the reason that I did that was because of my mother. She's very extroverted and just, how intense and chaotic borderlines are. And so they like to, well, they thrive off of other people's energy. And she really did mine. And I sort of got caught in that web and tried to mimic her and be an extrovert. And really was, it just really kind of ruined my life for a long time. And then when I found out I was an INFJ, and I was like, oh, I really need all this alone time, and I actually don't like people that much, and I actually don't care what people think. That was really eye opening for me, and really more than I think most people who find out they're an INFJ, they're like, oh my God, I finally feel understood, or there's someone to relate to, or whatever. For me, it was I finally found what was like killing me on the inside, like the not having enough time alone. You should know what your personality needs from you because you do have to feed your soul, and you have to pay attention to yourself. And when you have a borderline parent, it's really hard to do that. And I think that's my main struggle as an INFJ was really having a borderline parent, honestly. Yeah.
Okay. You said that your mom was extrovert. Do you know what type she is?
Hold on, I wrote this down. She's ESTP.
I think borderline personality disorder is super common with ESFPs and ESTPs, in my experience.
I read that also. Yes, I did read that, which is interesting. And yeah, and she is an untreated one also. So, and she's a that's the thing with the borderlines is you don't always know that there's an issue because they can have this very loving, gentle side also. And unlike a narcissist, I think it's a little more covert. The borderline is.
Just a little background for me. My mom, hey, we have a viewer. Thank you for joining in. My mom is, I'm thinking an ESFP, or maybe possibly an ISFP. I'm kind of thinking back. She's not alive anymore, so I don't really have anything to go off. And my lack of SI kind of not the best long term memory.
Right.
But yeah, my biological dad, he was an ESTP. I've only met him a handful full of times as an adult. I guess once technically. And he probably, I don't know. I don't know exactly what he has. I hasn't been around him, but then my stepdad came into the picture, who's an ESFP, and he definitely probably had borderline narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
kind of somewhere on the cusp of that.
Yeah.
And kind of it made me develop a condition called avoidant personality disorder, which is something that a lot of borderline people kind of feed off. Did you develop any kind of mental illnesses that you would like to share or discuss, or are you?
Absolutely. Borderline, I say if you want to diagnose someone with borderline, you look at their family because that's who is impacted the most. So, yes, I suffered and still do with major depression, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, agoraphobia, um, you know, fibromyalgia, all these different sorts of things just from my nervous system being in constant chaos, constant stress, you know, never having that grounded feeling that an INFJ needs or that any child or person needs, you know, just straight chaos. And that will affect you mentally and physically and does and has. I've seen it in a million people. You know, I mean, that's actually what led me. The physical symptoms was actually why I started going to therapy to figure out what the deal was in the first place and how I found out about everything, you know, because it will actually leave scars on your mind and your soul for sure.
Okay. So we have a lad out here. We'll definitely get some questions from the audience later. A lad out. All right. He's definitely agreeing with you, or she. I'm not sure the gender. I apologize. It's not very safe to assume that these days, I guess.
Right.
Do you mind sharing your age?
I am 39.
39. Okay. We're pretty close. I'm
39 years
37.
young.
39
Oh,
years young.
okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was the phobia you said that you have?
Agoraphobia, just not feeling safe leaving the house. It goes smack with panic disorder and anxiety. Just, it's not a chronic thing. It's something that I used to struggle with that I don't so much anymore, but I still don't leave that. I still don't like to leave the house.
Yeah, I
But
noticed that my grandma was like that, and my mom started getting like that too a little bit later in life.
yeah,
My grandpa was definitely probably a narcissist and probably bipolar disorder. Okay. So what other interventions have you found that's been helpful besides therapy? Have you tried any other modalities at all?
man, honestly, before I even found therapy, I found Carl Jung, and I didn't even know I was an INFJ when I
Hmm.
started studying him and reading his work. I didn't even know what Myers Briggs was. And I just sort of resonated with him. Um, and the reason I started reading him was because my brother had been arrested and they were having to see if he was fit for trial. You know, they call in a psychoanalysis. And so I was looking up what that was, and that's how I found out who Carl Jung was, but that he created that. And so, anyway, it just started this whirlwind of knowledge, basically, that I soaked up from him about how it's very unhealthy for like your mom to be your best friend. If it's very unhealthy if after you grow up you're still very enmeshed with your family. And so it's those sort of things that started making me question whether or not my relationship with my mother was healthy or not, because we were very much best friends and whatever. And even though she would enrage me, she was my mother, so I would hold it in, and then I would be miserable, and it would just start this horrible cycle. But I lost where I was even going with that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was just asking about different modalities you tried, maybe besides therapy. So yeah, I think
Oh
reading is
yeah, yeah. Just reading is my passion, and so that's honestly where I found all my answers.
I know we discussed on Instagram a little bit. Aeons was something that was an inspiration for you. Is there any other of Jung's work that you
The
found?
Red Book. The Red Book was so mind blowing for me, and it was interesting because everything I read on it, everyone's like, I have, this man is insane. I have no idea what he's talking about. And I read it, and I feel like I understood it, and I could understand. And he even cleared up spiritual questions and stuff that I had about Jesus and, God and the Godhead having four parts and God, and all of that finally made sense to me and was a really pivotal change in my life too.
Yeah, I think one big thing INTJs and INFJs have in common is that we don't know ourselves, and other people definitely don't know us as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
discovering my type was hugely beneficial as well. Something else
Huge.
too that I might want to suggest. Have you ever considered acupuncture?
No, I have considered it, yes, but I don't have somewhere available to me or in my area, which is unfortunate, but I would love to try acupuncture. I love all of the Eastern type, things like that. I think that a lot of the ancient stuff got overlooked, and now where you just take a pill for everything. But I think that there are some other things that work better than pills.
Yeah, for sure. I just had a bad experience with pills. I mean, I've been doing acupuncture kind of off and on, and it's been beneficial for the most part. I think the most beneficial thing for me actually has been LSD. I don't know if you're into that
Oh,
sort of thing.
see, I would love to try that too, but again, I don't have access to any of that here, but I would love to do that. I wish I lived somewhere where you could just like go have those experiences, but I don't. So,
There's definitely pros and cons having that accessibility. So
so what did it do for you? Like, do you have anxiety or anything from your borderline experience?
well, I would say avoidant personality disorder is like an
The
extreme,
main one?
yeah, extreme anxiety that's just always on and it doesn't go
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
So it definitely helped my depression. I kind of stopped doing this podcast and this content for a while because I just kind of hit a big wall and I couldn't really barely function and do my
Makes you
normal
feel,
activities. So
yeah, I've
that
been
kind of
there.
helped pull me out of it. So yeah, but it's definitely good for like fibromyalgia and all that kind of stuff. It kind of helps reset your central nervous system.
That's what I need, a full nervous system reset, a whole full body reboot.
I think pretty much everybody does these days with the way things are, staying busy all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And you said
Yeah.
before we started, we went live, that you said you had a hard time typing your dad, and he's kind of been in and out in your whole life. Do you know what type he is? Have you kind of decided on that?
Yeah, hold on just a second. Let me look at my notes. I can't even remember. ESFJ.
ESFJ. Interesting. You didn't want to stay around? Usually that's,
He, okay, here's the deal. That's what I thought. And then he couldn't. When you have an ESTP borderline, he couldn't make that work. And so he moved on and has a beautiful family, a wife and three other kids, and is a wonderful father and stuff like that. He just couldn't do that with my mother. You know what I mean?
yeah, I get it. That's one thing that ESFJs, they kind of have a hard time doing, is throwing their hands up and saying, I have enough. So
Right,
I guess it's kind of
right.
good on him in a way, but unfortunate for you.
Yeah, but yeah, it is what it is though. I mean, I under when you deal with someone who's so problematic, then when you're an adult, you begin to understand a little more than you do when you're young. Like I can empathize with him, like I know I can understand why you left. I would have left skid marks. It's like you can understand certain aspects of things a little better.
And you mentioned you have a brother at he got arrested. I think you said it's when you started reading Jung. What type is he, and how was he affected with this upbringing?
Yeah, so my brother Mitch is, I have him typed as an ESFP.
ESFP. Okay, so
He's
getting in trouble with
very,
the law.
yes, getting in trouble with the law. Just, I think he also inherited a lot of my mom's personality traits, the impulsiveness and kind of flakiness and stuff like that. And so I think I think that's why I think he's unhealed in every aspect, but I think that's why he continues to get in so much trouble. He's just so damn impulsive and just kind of living for this moment, you know.
That's what SE heroes do. They have that NI inferior, and they just live in the moment, don't think things through.
That is
Unfortunately.
exactly. Yeah, totally.
You have any other siblings, or?
I do not. I have a deceased sibling. He was 7 months old when he passed away, and I was 4 years old. So I like to always mention him. That's actually when my trauma started, was when he passed away when I was four. And then I was suddenly very aware of the fragility of life. And so growing up as an INFJ with that experience of death at a young age was also a very enlightening experience.
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. That is definitely, a lot of people don't think like something like that is traumatic, but that is pretty traumatic.
It was very traumatic. And yeah, and I don't know if I even talked to my therapist about it. I'm like I remember every single thing about it. And I'm like, is that normal? I was only like 4 years old. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Your that was what you based life on. It was life and death right then. So the fragility of life I knew right away. And one of the questions, I'll go right into a question that you asked, is if are you born was I born an INFJ? And that would go right into the trauma I experienced so early with death. It was so early that I can't necessarily say that I'm an INFJ because of that, but I do remember certain things about it that make me feel like I am an INFJ, and I also think that it is all tied into numerology and astrology and your birth chart.
Absolutely. I don't know if you watched the other videos, and I welcome other people to do it because they haven't got a lot of hits. I think it's really interesting. But there's this ENTJ I did. He's an astrologer named Xeon, and we were looking at birth charts. I looked at my birth chart, and we looked at Kurt Cobain's, and it definitely shows links of him, like of Kurt Cobain being an INFJ, and you can definitely see me being an INTJ. So I definitely think it's something that we're born into.
Absolutely. I think 100%. I do think, what do you think? I think empaths are born from trauma, but I think our personality, INFJ, INTJ, that is birth chart type universal stuff. But empaths, I think that's why narcissist and BPD and all of those people can also be empaths, because I think it is just a trait that you learn for survival from trauma.
So what's your definition of an empath? This is something I kind of looked into, and I
My definition of an empath is someone who can seriously sit down with someone and feel and then kind of intuit their state of mind or stance on something or their general well-being. And it's actually being hypervigilant and hypersensitive in overdrive, basically scanning your surroundings, looking for it's a trauma response,
mhm.
essentially, I think. But then there are empaths who are just intuitives.
So do you think there is such thing as a empath that's a sensor?
For manipulation purposes, yes.
So I'm still a little confused. So where can a borderline or narcissist be an empath? How does that work
Well,
exactly?
well, it's not that it's okay, that's where the confusion is. It's not that they're necessarily actually feeling the feelings, but they're aware of the tone of voice, facial expressions, um, from studying someone for manipulative reasons or whatever. They can come off as empathic. And a lot of them say they are empaths when they're actually not. They have, that's the way their mind works.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But a lot of them will say that they're empaths just to manipulate people into, I guess, thinking they have real feelings.
So you consider yourself a light worker. Where do you? I know there's a lot of different light workers. What kind of light worker are you?
So I don't know. I am not one of the new age spiritualist, light worker type people. I simply think light working it's basically, you're bringing light to dark situations, and it's not always good situations. It's not always good things. I don't like it when people say that light work is you just spread love and light everywhere and that's what you do, and you just make people who are sad feel happy and that's light work. That's not light work. In my opinion, light work is telling someone, listen, you're making a bad choice. Okay, if you'll remember, the last time you made this choice, it fucked up your life. So I essentially think light work is bringing light to situations that need light. whether they be good or bad or in any sense, really. I just think to expand your growth and consciousness, you can help someone if you can understand something that they might not see.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm consider myself an empath. I really struggle with picking up on people's emotions because of FE Trickster. I really lack that. And I think my development kind of exacerbated that. And facial cues and stuff, that's something I really had to practice at. But
Yeah,
I kind of see, like, I just had so much darkness in my life, and I can absorb that darkness and take it, which most people really can't. And I can kind of, I think I forgot what Jung exactly said, but he said coming to fruition is not, I'm paraphrasing here, coming to fruition is not making the
coming
light
to
brighter,
it's about making the darkness conscious.
making the darkness come to light, or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's so true. And that's, goes all into shadow work and all of that stuff. But it's one thing to be able to take it all in, but you also have to be able to transmute that and see if you can get something good out of it, which is where alchemy comes in, which I'm a huge fan of also. And um, I don't know if that's just the INFJ in me that tries to like romanticize and make um, just try to freaking get something good out of everything. I don't know if that's just an INFJ thing or not, but I think with anyone who's experienced trauma or someone with a borderline parent or whatever, if you can't take your experiences and make it into something valuable, even if it's a lesson, then you will be a severely depressed person, I think. And I think that is what leads to soul death.
Soul death, what is that exactly?
Soul death is where you just completely give in to the world and whatever you don't want, and you don't fight for your truth and your, who you are and what you want to be, and you just let life and the tragedies overrule you. And then you just kind of get to this place where you're running in place and you're not really living any, you don't really have any direction or anything. And you're, like if you love to sing or if you love to dance, you kind of stop doing those things. And that's depression. But depression is a warning that your soul is being affected by whatever's happening. And if that continues and your soul dies, then a physical death will follow. That is how illness, I mean, that is what it is to me. I think disease and illness all stem from essentially a soul death.
Yeah, I think mental health and physical health are greatly linked, and I think that's just we need to really concentrate on mental health here in this country. I think it's a huge, huge issue, and that's why things are just so
Yeah.
bad. Technology is kind of a double-edged sword. It made things easier, but now we have to we have to do 3 times more work because everything's so efficient. They expect more out of us, and we're just go, go, go all the time. So I think a lot of people who aren't mentally ill are mentally ill now just because of that. It's
Yeah,
kind of
it's
cut
true.
off here, but a lad out said, I feel like boomer censors invented mental abuse, and now gens have to carry their bad name now. Not sure exactly
Wow.
what you mean by that.
I don't know what that means.
Leave that there for a minute. We'll get into questions here in a little bit.
Okay,
um,
cool.
so I guess we're kind of on the borderline of Gen X and millennials. I don't really consider myself a millennial because some definitions kind of consider like you don't, if you're a millennial, you don't really remember life before the internet, but I definitely remember life before the internet.
I definitely do. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I'm Gen Z. I'm gonna go with Gen Z on that
yeah.
as far as I know. I don't know. But I still don't understand really. Boomer sensors. Oh, boomer sensors. Yeah.
Like baby boomers,
Yeah.
the generation before Gen X.
They invented mental abuse. It is crazy how everyone does even claim to have some sort of mental affliction of some sort these days. And back in the day, you didn't even talk about that, you didn't address it. It's not okay. And so the boomers and stuff, like even my mom, I'll mention something to her and she will not even think or convey that that's not even a traumatic event at all. And then so I'm like, it's not really, a death is not a traumatic event. But it's just you didn't talk about it back then, you didn't even act on it. And I think that's why so many people started getting cancer and all kinds of crap, really.
That and just all the chemicals and all the
Oh,
horrible
yeah.
food we eat, and
Oh, my
I think it's
God.
just a lot
Yes.
of things.
Yeah, totally. All of that horrible
Okay,
mixture.
just to kind of jump back to a loud out clarified here. I mean, generation affects empathy too. Boomer sensors are different from Gen Z sensors.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think generation of various of variable. Robert Greene, who's one of my favorite authors, an INFP, he definitely talks in Laws of Human Nature about generations, how they kind of it's cyclical. There's like 4 sets of generations and they cycle through and through.
Yeah, that's
It's
interesting.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Just a kind of a little story, like I said, like kind of bringing the darkness into the light and being able to handle all the dark things in life. I work in a behavioral health hospital, which is a very dark job, and about a month ago, maybe, this teenage boy attacked this 11-year-old kid and assaulted him pretty bad. I was like one of the first ones in to grab him, and I had to wrestle him to the ground, and ended up like biting me and all and stuff like
Oh,
that,
my
and we were
God.
training. Then maybe like 30 minutes later, we had to come do it again. He ended up stabbing me in the hand with a pin,
Are you
and
serious?
yeah, it didn't really bother me, but everybody else was just so freaked out, and they like pressed charges against this kid, and they dragged me in all this legal stuff I don't want to deal with.
Yeah,
But
that sucks. I would not want to do that.
yeah, but it just like it's happened to me. I was the one I was like kind of attacked, and but everyone else was just like freaking out. It's like just another day on a job, like what do you expect? It's kind of what happens here, but
I guess you're in the right field. I would not. I don't think I would fare so well if someone did that to me. Or
I guess
maybe
someone
they
has to
wouldn't
do
fare
it.
so well. No, not really. I used to work in the medical field and I freaking hated it so bad. I hated it so bad. Like it is not good for an INFJ to be like in an office setting and doing small talk all day and with patients. And I just couldn't. I mean, I could do it. I did it for a long ass time, but now I just like to sit and write, and I can't imagine being stabbed with a pen
Yeah,
at work.
it wasn't that bad, but I guess it is what it is. I don't know. So, would you say that you've experienced a spiritual awakening, or are you going through experiential awakening now, or have you, has it passed? I don't think it's something that ever truly ends, but
Yeah, it never ends, but I definitely started having a spiritual awakening when I was 35. So it's been like 4 years. And, but I do remember the first time I actually truly questioned things was when I was in the third grade. And so I always had these questions that nobody ever answered until Carl Jung came along. But so yeah, third grade, for some reason, I just remember I remember praying, and then I remember talking to God and thinking, what is all this? Like, what else is there? Because it terrified me to think that this was it. it terrified me as a child even. And so I questioned it, and I'm just now starting to learn sort of the answers to those questions. And I don't think you ever truly learn all of it, but you can learn enough to sort of connect the dots.
What questions were you asking exactly? I know as intuitives, we kind of ask questions and sensors get really frustrated with it. I know that was my experience being alone intuitive in my family, like questioning this, why that, why this, and
Yeah, they hate
sensors is
that.
just like that's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is. I can't stand that answer. My question, I guess, stemmed from death, really. I wanted to know, still at that age, I wanted to know where my brother went. I
Mm,
wanted to know what else, like, where did he go? And so that was always a question, I guess, from from the age of 4. But then in 3rd grade, I was just thinking, I don't know, I guess in my juvenile mind, it seemed I felt very boxed in and closed in on this earth. Like, this can't be it. Is there something else outside of this? And that's what I asked. And it's taken all of these years, but I've pretty much gotten an answer, yeah. So, I mean, it's not something I can just like explain, but right off the top of my head, but I've gotten a lot closer.
so it sounds like you're
So,
Christian.
I am not, I believe in Jesus and I believe in God, but not the way conservative modern Christians today do. I don't, I think the Gnostic ancient people were doing it right, and that man took over. Like, I think a lot of the Bible was misinterpreted. There's some things like that that I questioned even as a child, that I grew up to find out that other people questioned too. And then you look up where the Bible came from, and nobody can tell you. It's just like a bunch of men over the years, and a group of men leaders decided what would go in the Bible. And I don't know, I just questioned that. That bothered me. It didn't make sense to me how everyone could base their whole entire life off of something they knew nothing about. I hated that. So,
I, I think the Bible and other religious books like the Quran were the only books I've ever read. The more I read, the less sense they made.
yeah, it's just like it doesn't make sense to me. And so I couldn't, it's like I didn't want to believe in it, or I'm trying to not be a non-believer, because I believe in God. I, like Carl Jung said, I know God. I really do. But I do think that, and as an INFJ, do you think Jesus was an INFJ?
I kind of don't even. I kind of question if Jesus was even a real person, honestly.
Well, if you had to type his story, would you think he was an INFJ?
Yeah, that's possible. Even like I was just reading psychological types, which is a real Jung is extremely hard for me to read, but he even mentioned there without introverted intuition DOMs, there would have been no prophets in Israel. So
Exactly, yeah. And I just, um, shit, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm horrible about
yeah,
that.
yeah, SI demon there.
I know. Um, I just think, oh, Jesus, as an INFJ, I think people misinterpret Jesus as being weak and naive and things like that, and he's not at all like that. That's not even what, even the Bible, if you believe the Bible, that's not what the Bible says about Jesus. He flipped tables, and you know, stood up for what he believed in. And I do believe in that, ties back into Ion, Carl Jung,
Hmm.
the symbol of the self. I do believe that that is the symbol of the self, and that you're supposed to, that they invented Christianity to worship Christ instead of try to be like him, and
Let's change.
basically save the soul instead of even allowing you to have one.
Okay, let's change gears here a little bit. We'll take some questions from the audience. It shows I have two people here, but I know it's not accurate all the time. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, a lot of people say Buddha was an INTJ. I'm not. I haven't studied. I did study Buddhism a little bit.
Did you
It's
study
kind of.
Buddhism? What did you think?
I think that's probably one of the more. I resonate more with Eastern religions and Eastern philosophies than I do
Me
Western
too.
religions.
That's in, going in instead of out. That was a huge lesson for me, a huge spiritual lesson for me, was that I had basically reached externally for things that only come internally from the
Yeah,
inside. So
I'm real big on the middle path. Like a lot of religions are like, like Christianity preaches that you should be poor and Jesus was poor and you should be giving, but a lot of these
right.
Christians are just buying. Pastors at churches have BMWs and stuff. It's kind of sickening.
Yeah, find someone who's doing that. Good luck.
All right.
But
So I don't. It's questions for me or you or both of us. How did having BPD parents affect your romantic relationships?
wow, yeah, it did affect romantic relationships. Do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I definitely go after women in the past who are borderline personality disorder as well. I guess, there's a big theory about you kind of go after the same kind of romantic partner uh,
Mm-hmm.
as your mother or your father was, depending on what the opposite gender was, or I guess it could vary with sexuality and stuff. But
Right.
I guess I kind of have a savior complex myself where I always try to find somebody that needs saving, basically. And my first wife, I want to say she's an ESTP. She possibly could be an ENFP or ENTP. I don't have contact with her anymore, but she was definitely borderline. And my son's mother, who I did a video with when I first started this channel, she definitely shows traits of it. She's doing so much better, and I'm proud of her of all the way she came. But yeah, I basically don't really have much of a love life anymore. If you want to
Yeah.
piggyback
I've
on that.
I have been married, happily married, for 16 years. Um, but it having a borderline parent affected my relationship in that when you have a borderline parent, they become so dependent on you that you don't really have time for anything else. Or if you do have extra time, you're just so freaking exhausted. You don't want to engage in any more conversation or try to life coach someone else or whatever. It's just like the borderline parent will completely drain you if you are in constant contact with them and you let them, which I did. And they will take all of your time away. They will cause chaos in your life, and that will affect your relationships. It can affect the way your partner sees you and your response to your parents. So yeah, I think it has a huge effect on relationships.
Yeah, for sure. Then like having a borderline lover, girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever you want to call it,
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's the same thing.
yeah. I
It's
don't
all
have I actually did the opposite and got someone who is not borderline, and he is wonderful. Though he has his own faults, but he definitely noticed, unhealthy things between me and my mom. He'd be like, "God, she's calling again," or whatever. it will affect your relationship with your, if you let it.
Well, I'm
Which
glad you
a
found
borderline
somebody.
will demand it.
Yeah, they're very demanding. I'm glad you found somebody who is you're compatible with and had a long, healthy relationship with.
Me too. He has been a rock for sure.
Another question from a lad out: do you get paranoid? I would say yes. I think most
Uh,
INJs do with our any nemesis or any
I'm
opposing
always
person.
paranoid. Flat out, I'm always paranoid. It doesn't matter if I feel safe or whatever. On some level, I'm paranoid. Yes. I don't know if that's because of. I know that it is because of having a borderline parent, but it also could be just from being an INJ.
Yeah, I think definitely having a borderline parent because you're like when you grow up with a borderline parent, your needs are rarely ever met. You have
Your
to
needs
be
are
the adult.
last. You meet their needs first, and if you meet those needs, then you can have your own. If you do, but yeah, so it's very time consuming to
Yeah,
satisfy borderline.
if you have the
So
ability to meet your own needs as a child, I mean, it's hard enough meeting an
yeah.
adult's needs as a child. So
Oh my God, yes. Having to take care of yourself and then be responsible for the well-being of your parent, and just seeing your parent not know who they are, and then you're trying to figure out who you are, and that's just a really toxic thing right there.
what's his or her type? I'm not sure who you're referring to there, a lad out. Okay. If anybody else has any more questions, we'll definitely check those before we dismiss this podcast. Jay joined us. Yeah, we're definitely not familiar with who Jay is, but I appreciate you joining in. Parents sound like mine, although I ended up with BPD myself. I'm sorry to hear about that, Jay. I hope you're taking the.
Hey Jay, honestly, I thought that I did too for a while, but there were just some traits that I found out in therapy that I was sort of mimicking, and I was able to change those. So I swear to God, if anyone can go to therapy, just go. Even if you think you're great, go to therapy. You will be marveled at what you can find out. But don't claim the borderline yourself just because you are traumatized from a borderline. You can heal from it. So I would say go to therapy or stick with it if you're in it.
It's good advice. Definitely therapy can be very helpful. DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, has been especially helpful for people with borderline personality disorder. Allowed out clarified, and she was asking, what type is your partner, your husband?
I know. What did I say my husband was? Hold on. I just typed him. I never had before, and I don't know why. I'm not a good typer like you are. I am not extremely. What did I say he was? Do you remember?
I don't think you told me.
Hold on. Oh, we talked about my mom and dad.
We lost signal.
Oh my God. Are you there?
Yeah, I think your
Are we
camera
there?
got turned off. There we go.
Okay. He's an ISTP.
ISTP, interesting. Okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting that you go for these a lot of artisans in your life, SPs. I noticed that you're an INFJ and you said your mom was an ESTP. You guys are dual. So if you guys look at your cognitive
We have,
functions, they mirror each other.
yes, I have a hugely artistic family. I'm a writer. My brother plays guitar. My nana was a singer. She put an album out back in the 60s. Come from a very strong line of artists, weirdly. So, yeah.
All right.
But my husband, yeah, he's an ISTP.
Okay. Very cool. ISTPs are cool. All right. So you said you started reading Jung and you didn't know you're an INFJ. When did you discover typology and when did you figure out you're an INFJ?
Typology, I started reading Jung when I was like 34, and I didn't discover I was an INFJ till I was 36, 37. And I didn't even know what that was. I was just honestly trying to figure out other things. And it was, oddly enough, it was my mom who, because I had gotten her sort of interested in what I was talking about. We were on speaking terms at the time. We're not currently on speaking terms. We are sometimes, and then sometimes we're not. But she actually brought it up, and she was like, I was an ESTP. And so I took the test and I found out I was an INFJ, and I took another test, and INFJ, and sure enough. And then once you start reading about it, then you know. Once you read that, you know. And yeah, that was a really pivotal moment.
Very cool. I think there's another question. We'll look at this real quick. Apart from your mom's BPD, did you two get along? What would you do to calm her down?
Yes, we did get along, and that's what made, I guess, the whole thing really, really toxic and sad, because I do love my mom, and because she's borderline, she has really good traits and she has really bad traits. Unfortunately, she doesn't utilize enough of the good to outweigh the bad. But hold on just a second. Can you read the question again? I'm sorry.
No. Apart from your mom's BPD, did you two get along?
Okay.
What would you do to calm her down?
Yes, we got along great, oftentimes too great. Before, I would say in my younger years, before I set up boundaries to calm her down, I would basically absorb her emotions. I would, you know, tell her what she wanted to hear. If she was feeling depressed, I would try to, just, it was easy to know what the problem was. And so I would just basically coddle her, is what I did. I coddled her, and it was not good for me or her.
Mm-hmm.
I was a people pleaser, and people pleasing, I don't care what type you are, people pleasing will kill you, because it is not in line with your soul's purpose. It will never be in line with your soul's purpose just to constantly people please somebody. And it's easy to do that with parents because you depend on them for your survival. So you have to, for survival, you have to make that parent happy, then you're going to make that parent happy. And that's a really toxic thing to get into.
For sure. I definitely resonate with a lot of that. We are approaching an hour here, so I would like to wrap this up. Some questions I like to finish off. Do you have a favorite type?
Do I have a favorite type? I do not have a favorite type.
Okay. A lot of FE users don't have favorites, so it makes a lot of sense.
I have, I'm not a censor fan. I'll just say I'm not a censor fan.
Fair enough. Do you have a least favorite type going into that, I guess? Or least favorite sensor?
Uh, no. ES, ESTP, I think it is. What is Trump?
ESTP.
What is
Makes sense.
Trump?
That's your dual side, and that was your borderline mother's type, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be it for me.
Another question, I think we kind of you touched on this a little bit. What advice would you give someone who wants to break the cycle of BPD and not bring their pain onto others?
Go to therapy. But hold on, I really did write something down for this question, and I want to make sure that it gets across. Okay? I'm a pen and paper old school writer. Okay. This is what my advice would be. You have to be able to accept the fact that your borderline parent does not know that they're wrong. They genuinely do not know that they're wrong. They think that everything that they do is right. And so trying to win an argument or battle with them, or trying to make them understand your truth, will never work. So it just won't happen. So you're going to continue to re-traumatize yourself every time you try to validate yourself through your borderline parent. I would say that if you're wondering if you have a parent who is borderline, look at the relationships around them, because they are like hurricanes. And so they might look okay, but all of their family members and everyone, I guarantee you, will have a different story. I would say if you've been gaslit by a borderline parent, to stand in your own truth, accept your own truth, believe it, and don't try to make them believe it, because they never will. So
lack of insight is prevalent with personality disorders, especially with cluster B personality disorder, which includes borderline and narcissism, which we touched on quite a bit here. The final question I have that I want to start asking somebody is, I didn't write down, so I apologize if you can't answer this question. You have 3 book recommendations for the audience.
Yeah. Just like novels or just
Anything.
books in general? Yes, I absolutely 100%. The first one would be She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb. The second one would be I Know This Much Is True by Wally Lamb. And the third one would be The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt.
Okay. Not familiar with
Top
any of
3
those.
books, life-changing, unbelievable books you would not believe. Well, hopefully, if you feel as deeply as I do.
Speaking of books, we didn't touch on yours too much. I know you said before we started rolling that one of them is based off your mom's life from her perspective, right?
Yeah, I did. I wrote a book. I wrote a novel in my mom's voice. So it's kind of like her telling her version of her life. And but it's fictionalized too. It's not my story, but I did base it off of her life, because some really crazy shit. She had a really, really crazy life. Really crazy life. And so even aside from borderline, I mean, we had an insane amount of death in our family. And I think it all affected us all differently. And that was really interesting to see how we each dealt with the deaths.
All right. Yeah, I think just one thing keep in mind is, like Amanda touched on, like they don't know that they're wrong. They don't really have the insight to see that they're wrong, and they are people too, and they've been traumatized too. So definitely come from a
That's very
perspective.
important.
If you're dealing with somebody with borderline personality disorder, realize that, but definitely get yourself and your loved one out of harm's way, of course, because it could be very disastrous.
Yep.
All right. Is there any closing thoughts you have? Or go ahead.
No, I would just say I encourage people to know their types. Know what type you are, so you can live your like true authentic self, and have some tips to maybe live a healthier version of who you are.
All right. Very cool. We had someone else pop in real quick. The reason I'm adding them to the screen, I apologize, because it's cut off and I can't see it. Hassan Abdel Hafsif, sorry if I said that wrong. BPD is like a polar opposite. Yeah, I'm not sure polar opposite of what exactly, but I guess that's why it's called borderline. There's two different sides of the spectrum, and they're flipping around. But
Yeah,
anyways,
they
we are out of time here. If you like this content, please like, share, subscribe. You could also contribute to this project by I have a buy me a coffee. So if you want to give a one-time donation or more, I would really appreciate it. It does cost a lot with subscription fees and cameras and microphones and all this good stuff. You could also check this podcast out on Spotify, Apple, Google, and all those places too. Um, Thank you for going beyond the clickbait. Thank you for Hassan, Alad Out, and Jay, and anybody else that popped in and watched the live stream. Thank you for going. I already said that. Have a
thanks
good day.
guys. Thanks.